The room was filled with music and laughter, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. I stood in front of the microphone, staring out at the sea of faces, friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, all gathered to celebrate my husband Henry's special achievement. The golden lights above shimmered on the champagne glasses. The crystal chandeliers swayed gently, and the air was heavy with perfume, wine, and secrets. And then, I said it. My husband has been lying to you all. The words slipped out of me like shards of glass. For a moment, I couldn't even believe I had spoken them. A stunned silence spread across the ballroom like a ripple, the laughter dying mid-note, the clinking of forks against plates falling mute. That's when Henry's hand gripped the table so tight his knuckles turned white. He shot me a look that could cut steel, and I realized I had gone too far. Or maybe, finally, far enough. The people closest to me gasped. My daughter Maya, her eyes wide and trembling, whispered, "Mom." My son James half rose from his chair, unsure if he should stop me or protect me. And Henry, my husband of 25 years, stood frozen in the spotlight, his mask of charm slipping, his face a storm of anger, fear, and shame. That was the moment I knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. But to understand how we got here, to this night of truth, betrayal, and shattered illusions, you need to know the beginning. Because the cracks in my marriage didn't appear overnight. No. They crept in quietly, like shadows at sunset, until one day the whole house was swallowed in darkness. It began with the smallest of things. Henry and I had always had what others called a perfect marriage. He was charming, successful, and always knew how to make people laugh. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the woman who kept everything together. Our home, our children, our lives. Neighbors would often say, "You're lucky, Naomi. A man like Henry? Handsome, ambitious, devoted. They don't come around often." And I would smile politely, holding my secret doubts deep inside, because even then, I knew something wasn't right. It started with the late nights. At first, Henry told me he was working late at the office. "Big projects, Naomi," he'd say with a tired smile, loosening his tie as he kissed my forehead. You know how it is. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. After all, hadn't he worked so hard for us? Hadn't he built this life where our children could have opportunities I only dreamed of as a girl? So I let it slide. But then came the phone calls. Short, hurried conversations taken in the hallway, his back turned toward me. His voice dropped to a low murmur, words I couldn't quite catch, and when I'd ask who it was, he'd smile that disarming smile and say, "Just business, honey. Don't you worry." But I did worry, because after 25 years, you know when your husband is lying. You feel it in your bones, in the way he avoids your eyes, in the way his hand lingers just a little too long on his phone, in the way his laughter no longer includes you. Still, I tried to brush it aside. I cooked his favorite meals, kept the house spotless, made sure the children never felt the tension creeping between us. I told myself maybe I was overthinking, maybe it was just stress, maybe I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew. One night, the truth nearly slipped out. Henry had left his phone on the counter while he went upstairs to change. The screen lit up with a message. My breath caught as I read the words, "Can't wait to see you again." Last night was unforgettable. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. When Henry came down, freshly showered, his tie perfectly knotted, I wanted to scream, to throw the phone at him, to demand answers. But instead I slipped it back onto the counter and pretended nothing had happened, because I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I began to watch him more closely. Every glance, every excuse, every sudden trip out of town. I became a detective in my own home, piecing together fragments of lies, waiting for the moment the truth would reveal itself. And slowly, the woman inside me began to change. I was no longer the quiet, obedient wife who turned a blind eye. I became suspicious, restless, angry. I began to resent his easy charm, his laughter, the way he could fool everyone but me. I started waking in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with the weight of secrets I hadn't even spoken aloud. Maya noticed first. She came into my room one night, her hair tangled from sleep, her little face full of worry. "Mom," she whispered, climbing onto the bed beside me. "Why are you crying?" I didn't even realize I was. Tears streamed down my face as I pulled her close, forcing a smile. "I'm just tired, baby. That's all. But children always know. They feel the storms even when we try to shield them." James, older and sharper, began to withdraw. He spent more time outside the house, hanging out with friends, avoiding the tension that filled the air like smoke. I hated what Henry's betrayal was doing to them, how it was stealing the innocence from their childhood. And yet, I stayed silent. Because as much as I wanted to shout the truth, I feared what it would mean. Our family, our reputation, our future, all of it hung in the balance. If I exposed him, if I ripped the mask away, what would happen to us? But as you already know, silence doesn't save you. It only delays the inevitable. And so, step by step, lie by lie, I was dragged toward the night where I would finally break, the night where I would stand in front of everyone and say, "My husband has been lying to you all." But that night still felt far away then. Back then, I was still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. That hope would soon be shattered in ways I could never have imagined.
The night I saw the message on Henry's phone should have been the turning point. I should have confronted him, demanded answers, ripped the truth out of him like a thorn buried in my flesh. But instead, I pretended not to see. I put the phone back exactly where it had been and plastered a smile on my face when he came downstairs. Because fear is a powerful thing. I was terrified of what would happen if I said the words out loud, terrified of what it would mean for our family, our children, for the life we had built over 25 years. If I opened my mouth, if I asked the wrong question, everything would shatter. And maybe, deep down, a part of me wasn't ready to admit I had been living with a stranger. So I kept quiet. But my silence didn't erase the truth. It only fed it. Henry began to change in ways that were impossible to ignore. He grew more distant, more impatient. When he spoke to me, it was as if his mind was somewhere else. He no longer laughed at my jokes, no longer asked how my day was, no longer touched me with the warmth he once did. His hugs became brief, his kisses mechanical. When I reached for his hand one evening at dinner, he flinched ever so slightly, as though my touch burned him. That single motion cut me deeper than any argument ever could. I started noticing small details, things I had once brushed aside. The faint trace of perfume on his jacket, a scent that wasn't mine, the way he lingered in the driveway before coming inside, his face lit by the glow of his phone screen, the sudden gym membership he insisted on, though he had never cared much for exercise before. And then there were the lies, small ones at first, but lies nonetheless, working late, just grabbing drinks with the guys, had to meet a client out of town. The excuses multiplied, flimsy and thin, like cheap fabric trying to hide a gaping wound. One evening, I decided to follow him. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, keeping a safe distance behind his car. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would shatter the windshield. He drove across town, not to the office, not to a client's dinner. Instead, he pulled into the parking lot of a quiet restaurant, the kind of place couples chose for intimate dinners. I parked far away, my eyes glued to him, and then I saw her. A young woman stepped out of a car parked near his. She was striking, long dark hair, red dress clinging to her figure, confidence in every step she took. She smiled at Henry, and he smiled back, a smile I hadn't seen in years, a smile reserved for someone who made his heart race. My breath caught in my throat. The air inside my car grew thick, suffocating. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, every nerve in my body screaming. I wanted to storm inside, to scream at him, to drag him home and demand answers. But I didn't. I sat there, frozen, watching as my husband of 25 years walked into a restaurant with another woman. I drove home in silence, tears blurring the road. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I was numb. I went inside, set the table, and prepared dinner as if nothing had happened. When Henry finally came home hours later, his tie loosened, his face glowing with that same secret smile. I forced myself to look him in the eye and say, "How was your day?" He kissed my cheek and said, "Long, I'm exhausted." And I nodded, swallowing the scream clawing at my throat. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his steady breathing as he drifted into sleep. The man who had once been my partner, my protector, my everything, now felt like a stranger lying inches away. And the cruelest part, I still loved him. That love was a chain around my neck, keeping me tethered, even as he pulled away. I hated myself for it. Hated the way my heart still longed for the man he used to be. I wanted to be strong, to pack my bags, to leave. But love is stubborn. It holds on even when it shouldn't. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of suspicion and quiet rage. I tried to focus on the children, tried to keep life as normal as possible. Maya, sweet and innocent, still clung to her father's every word. James, though, had grown more distant. I could see the storm brewing inside him. He wasn't blind. He noticed the way Henry came home late, the way my smile seemed forced, the way the tension in the house hung heavy, like a storm cloud. One night, James confronted me. "Mom," he said, standing in the doorway of the kitchen while I washed the dishes, "is Dad seeing someone?" The plate slipped from my hands, shattering in the sink. My heart raced as I turned to face him. His young face twisted with worry and anger. "James?" My voice faltered. "Why would you ask that?" He shrugged, but his eyes burned. "Because I'm not stupid. I see the way he acts. He's never home. And when he is, he doesn't look at you the way he used to." Tears welled in my eyes. I wanted to tell him the truth, but how could I? How could I shatter his world with words that would change everything? So, I lied. "Your father loves us," I said softly, forcing a smile. "He's just busy. Work has been hard lately." James didn't look convinced. He clenched his jaw, his fists tightening at his sides. "If he hurts you, Mom, I'll never forgive him." And then he walked away, leaving me trembling in the kitchen. The shards of broken porcelain glittering in the sinks like tiny daggers. That night, as I lay awake again, I realized something. Silence wasn't protecting my children anymore. It was hurting them. My silence was teaching them to accept betrayal, to endure pain, to swallow the truth for the sake of appearances. I couldn't keep pretending forever, and yet, I still wasn't ready to explode. I began to plan instead, to gather strength, to bide my time. If Henry thought I would stay silent forever, he was wrong. One day I would speak. One day I would shatter the illusion he so carefully crafted, and that day would come sooner than he ever expected. It's strange how quickly lies become part of your daily routine. They slip in like dust through the cracks, settling on everything until you almost stop noticing them. Almost. I found myself living in two worlds. In one, I was the dutiful wife, the loving mother, smiling at neighbors, hosting family dinners, attending church on Sundays with Henry's arm around my shoulder. In the other, I was a woman carrying a secret too heavy to bear, silently counting the hours he spent away, watching every flicker of his expression for clues, lying awake each night while he drifted into dreams that didn't include me. But the walls between those worlds were starting to crumble. It was at a neighborhood barbecue that I first saw it, Henry's charm faltering in public. Normally, he was the life of the party, always with a joke, always the first to grab a drink and start a story. But that day, his smile was thin, his eyes distracted, his phone glued to his hand. "Henry, put that thing away," I whispered under my breath as he typed furiously, ignoring the group gathered around him. He barely looked up. "It's work, Naomi. Important." But I knew better. I had seen the way his face lit up when certain messages came through. That wasn't work. That was her. The worst part? People noticed. Our friends, who once envied our so-called perfect marriage, exchanged glances. I saw the pity in their eyes, the curiosity. It made my stomach twist. Later that evening, while I refilled the salad bowl, one of the neighbors leaned close and whispered, "Is everything all right, Naomi? He seems distracted lately." I forced a laugh, shaking my head. "He's just tired. Work has been overwhelming." But inside, I wanted to scream, to tell her she was right, to admit that the man she saw wasn't the man I married anymore. When we got home that night, I finally snapped. "Henry," I said, my voice shaking as I stood in the kitchen while he loosened his tie. "Are you having an affair?" The words hung in the air like smoke. My chest heaved. My hands trembled. But I forced myself to look him in the eye. He froze. For just a second, I saw guilt flicker across his face. But then he laughed, shaking his head. "Naomi, please," he said, pouring himself a drink. "Don't be ridiculous." Then why the lies? The late nights? The phone you can't put down for 5 minutes? He sighed, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "You're imagining things. Maybe you should, I don't know, find a hobby. Something to keep you busy." The words stung more than any confession could have. "A hobby?" I whispered. "After everything I've given to this family, you think I need a hobby?" But he didn't answer. He just walked upstairs, leaving me standing in the kitchen with tears burning my eyes. That night, I sat on the porch alone, staring at the dark sky. I thought about the years I had given him, the sacrifices, the dreams I had buried so he could chase his. And for what? For him to treat me like a burden, like an obstacle. It was the first time I truly felt the fire inside me, a fire that whispered, "You don't have to take this anymore." Still, the fear of breaking everything apart kept me in chains. The children felt it too. Maya grew quiet, withdrawn, her once bright smile dimming. She clung to me at night, asking if everything was okay. I lied to her, over and over, even as my heart shattered. James grew angrier. One evening, Henry snapped at me during dinner. Something small, a complaint about the chicken being too dry. And James slammed his fist on the table. "Don't talk to her like that," he shouted. Henry's face darkened. "Watch your tone, young man." "No, you watch yours," James shot back, his voice trembling with fury. "You don't treat Mom right. You think we don't see it? You think we don't notice you sneaking around lying to us?" The silence that followed was deafening. Maya burst into tears, pushing her plate away. Henry stood slowly, his chair scraping the floor. His eyes burned with anger, but he didn't speak. Instead, he walked out, grabbing his keys and slamming the door behind him. The house shook with the force of it, and so did I. I pulled Maya close, rubbing her back as she sobbed. James paced the kitchen, his fists clenched, his chest heaving. "Mom," he said finally, turning to me. "Why do you let him do this to you? Why do you stay?" I had no answer, because how could I explain the years of love, the memories, the weight of promises made in front of God and family? How could I tell him that sometimes women stay, not because they are weak, but because walking away feels impossible? But James's words haunted me. Why do you stay? The days that followed only deepened the cracks. Henry grew bolder in his lies, less careful. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all, texting that he was working late, and then disappearing into the night. When he did come home, he reeked of perfume and guilt. I began to imagine what life would be like without him. The thought both terrified and liberated me. And then one evening, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, no name. Inside was a single photograph. Henry, sitting at a restaurant, his hand on the young woman's knee. My breath caught, my hands trembling as I stared at the image. Proof. Cold. Undeniable proof. I slipped the photo back into the envelope and tucked it away, my mind racing. Who had sent it? A friend? A stranger? Someone who wanted me to know? It didn't matter. The truth was no longer just in my heart. It was in my hands. And I knew then. I couldn't stay silent forever. The day was coming when I would speak, when I would take back the voice I had swallowed for far too long. And when I did, the world Henry built, the world of lies and charm and deceit, would come crashing down. The envelope with the photograph sat hidden in my dresser drawer, wrapped in an old scarf, like a secret too dangerous to leave in the open. Every time I opened that drawer, I felt its presence calling to me, reminding me that the truth was no longer just a suspicion. It was tangible, undeniable. I would stare at it sometimes, my hands trembling, wondering who had sent it. A friend? A neighbor? A stranger who wanted to see Henry exposed? Whoever it was, they had given me a weapon, a piece of proof I couldn't ignore. And yet, night after night, I kept my silence. Henry, meanwhile, grew more reckless. He didn't even bother to hide his late nights anymore. Sometimes, he came home at dawn, smelling of cologne that wasn't his shirt wrinkled, his eyes heavy with secrets. When I asked where he had been, his answers were short, dismissive. Work. Clients. None of your business. Each word was a dagger, and each dagger dug deeper into the person I used to be. The children noticed everything. Maya grew quieter, her drawings at school shifting from bright colors to dark, heavy shades. James grew angrier, his voice sharper, his patience thin. One evening, when Henry finally stumbled through the door after being gone all night, James stood in the hallway waiting. "Where were you?" he demanded, his voice like steel. Henry's jaw tightened. "Watch your mouth." "No," James snapped, stepping closer. "I'm done watching. You think we don't know what you're doing. You think Mom doesn't know." Henry's hand twitched at his side, his face red with fury. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might strike him. I rushed forward, placing myself between them. "Enough!" I cried, my voice breaking. "Not in this house. Not in front of me." Henry glared at us both, his chest heaving, then turned and stormed upstairs without another word. James shook with rage. "Mom, you can't keep living like this." "We can't." His words echoed in my heart. Because he was right. I couldn't keep pretending, couldn't keep swallowing the lies. But I also knew that when I finally spoke, when I finally let the truth out, it would destroy everything. And then, as if fate itself had chosen the moment, the invitation arrived. It was gold embossed, fancy, elegant, an invitation to our 25th wedding anniversary celebration. Hosted by Henry, the card read, as if he was some kind of hero, celebrating a milestone of loyalty and devotion. My stomach turned at the words. He wanted the world to see us as the perfect couple. He wanted the applause, the admiration, the facade of a marriage built on love and trust. But I knew better, and now I had proof. I stared at the invitation for a long time, my hands shaking. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the night I would stop pretending. Maybe this was the night I would show everyone who Henry truly was. In the days leading up to the party, the tension in the house grew unbearable. Henry was in unusually high spirits, talking about speeches and guest lists, about the catered dinner and the music. He beamed when he spoke, his charm returning like a mask freshly polished. But behind that smile, I saw the cracks. I saw the nervous flicker in his eyes when he caught me watching him. I saw the way his hand tightened around his phone, the way his shoulders stiffened when the children avoided him. He knew the walls were closing in. On the day of the party, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. I hardly recognized the woman staring back. There were lines on my face, from years of holding in pain, shadows under my eyes from sleepless nights. But there was also something else, something I hadn't seen in a long time: strength. For the first time in years, I felt a fire burning inside me, a fire that whispered, "Tonight you will speak. Tonight, you will reclaim yourself." Maya came into the room as I adjusted my dress. Her eyes filled with tears as she hugged me tightly. "Mom," she whispered, "are you okay?" I kissed the top of her head, holding her close. "I will be," I said softly. "I promise." At the party, the ballroom sparkled with golden lights and glittering chandeliers. Guests filled the room, dressed in their finest, sipping champagne and laughing as if nothing in the world could touch them. The air was thick with music, perfume, and expectation. Henry, in his sharp suit, moved from table to table like a politician, shaking hands, laughing loudly, basking in the glow of admiration. To everyone else, he was the perfect husband, the devoted father, the man celebrating 25 years of unbreakable love. But I knew the truth, and so did the photograph hidden in my purse, tucked away, but close enough to remind me of why I was here. When it was time for speeches, Henry stood at the microphone, his voice booming through the ballroom. 25 years, he said proudly, smiling at me across the room. Can you believe it? 25 years with the most amazing woman I've ever known. Naomi, my rock, my partner, my love. The crowd applauded, cheering as he raised his glass. Tears stung my eyes, not from joy, but from the bitter taste of his lies. As he continued, speaking about loyalty, devotion, and love, I felt the fire inside me grow. Each word he spoke was another spark, igniting the flames until I could no longer contain them. When he finished, the applause thundered through the room. And then, as the guests began to settle, I stood. My knees trembled, my heart pounded, but my voice was steady as I walked toward the microphone. "Thank you," I began, my eyes sweeping the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for celebrating with us." Henry smiled, but I saw the flicker of unease in his eyes. "And thank you," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "for giving me the courage to finally tell the truth." The room grew quiet. The laughter died. The music stopped. Henry's face paled as he turned toward me, his smile frozen in place. And that was the moment I knew there was no turning back. The silence in the ballroom was suffocating. It pressed against my chest as I stood at the microphone, every pair of eyes on me. My hands trembled as I gripped the sides of the podium. But my voice was clear, strong, almost foreign to me, as if some deeper version of myself had finally taken control. For years, I began, my gaze sweeping over the crowd. I have played the part of the devoted wife. I have smiled when I wanted to scream. I have stood by a man who did not deserve my loyalty, and I have kept secrets that have been eating me alive. Gasps rippled through the room. I saw women lean forward, eyes wide, men shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Henry's face was frozen in a tight smile, his knuckles white around his champagne glass. He muttered under his breath, his eyes warning me, "Stop now." But I didn't stop. "Tonight," I said, reaching into my purse, "I can't play that part anymore. I won't." I pulled out the envelope, the photograph inside glinting beneath the golden lights. The weight of it seemed to silence even the faint rustle of dresses and suits in the room. "This," I said, holding it up, "is proof. Proof that the man you are celebrating tonight, the man who wants you to believe in 25 years of love and devotion, is a liar." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Henry's face turned crimson. "Naomi," he hissed, his voice low, his jaw clenched. "Don't do this." I turned to him. my eyes burning with all the years of pain he had caused me. Why not, Henry? Afraid of the truth? Afraid that these people will finally see who you really are? And with that, I placed the photograph on the podium, turning it so the crowd could see. The image was sharp, undeniable. Henry with another woman, his arm around her waist, his lips pressed against hers in a kiss that stripped away every illusion of loyalty. Gasps turned into cries. A woman dropped her glass, the sound shattering against the marble floor. Somewhere, a man muttered, "Oh my God." Henry's mask cracked. He slammed his glass down, the liquid spilling across the table. "Enough," he roared, his voice echoing through the ballroom. But it was too late. The truth was out. I straightened my shoulders, my heart pounding. For years I let him define me. I let him silence me. But not anymore. Tonight I stand for myself, for my children, for every woman who has ever been told to keep quiet, to smile, to endure. The applause started softly, a single pair of hands clapping in the back of the room, then another, and another, until the entire ballroom shook with the sound of support. Henry stood there, red-faced, trembling with fury, his chest rising and falling like a bull about to charge. He looked at me with eyes so dark, so full of venom, that for a moment, fear coursed through me. He leaned close, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "You think this is over? You've humiliated me, Naomi? You'll regret this." I held his gaze, my voice steady. "No, Henry, you'll regret it." The rest of the evening blurred into chaos. Guests whispering, some leaving in disgust, others patting my shoulder in quiet solidarity. My children stood by me, James with his arm protectively around my shoulder, Maya clutching my hand with tears in her eyes. For the first time in years, I felt free. But freedom, I realized, was not without cost. In the days that followed, Henry disappeared. His belongings were gone from the house, his phone disconnected. At first, I thought it was shame that drove him away, that he had slunk into some dark corner to lick his wounds. But then the strange phone calls began. Late at night, the phone would ring. When I answered, there was only silence. Sometimes, I thought I could hear breathing on the other end, steady and menacing. One evening, after putting the children to bed, I walked into the kitchen to find an envelope on the counter. There was no stamp, no address, just my name scrawled across it in jagged handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, taken through the window of my own home. I staggered back, my heart racing. Someone had been watching me, someone close enough to see me in my private moments, in the place I thought was safe. James rushed in when he heard the sound of the envelope dropping to the floor. He picked it up, his eyes widening as he saw the photograph. "Mom, who did this?" I pressed a trembling hand to my lips, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know, but deep down I did know. Henry wasn't gone. He was out there, watching, waiting, and he wasn't finished with me.